The crying hits him before he even touches the door. 3 voices. Layered on top of each other, each one its own pitch, its own need, not the sound of chaos, but the sound of 3 separate lives making themselves known at the same time. Cairos Kim stops walking. His knuckles are raised, close to the wood. He hadn't knocked yet. The door is already open. He pushes it wider. The room floods him. Ivory curtains. Morning light stretched across the floor in long, pale sheets. 3 wooden cribs arranged in a careful triangle, each one holding a small wrapped body, each one the source of a voice. And in the nursing chair positioned between 2 of them, dark curly hair catching the light at its edges, shoulders easy, hands folded in her lap. Norelle. His wife. The woman the government said was gone. Hi viewers, if your partner signed a document that changed your entire life without reading it, would you forgive them, or would that be the end? She turns when she hears him. Her face gives nothing away. No fear. No relief. No reaching toward him. Her eyes find him the way a lighthouse finds a ship in the dark, steady, certain, already decided. Behind her, arms folded across her chest, charcoal jacket sitting perfectly straight, stands Elson Kim. His mother. And she is not looking at Norelle. She is looking at him. Her eyes carry something he has never once seen in them. Not anger. Not relief. Something closer to a verdict already handed down, waiting for the courtroom to catch up. Cairos cannot make his mouth work. His mind reaches for a timeline and finds only wreckage. She was deported. He had seen the confirmation. He had filed it somewhere in the back of his chest and kept moving, the way men like him keep moving, not by healing, but by replacing one appointment with the next, one signature with another, one morning with another morning until the shape of what was lost stops announcing itself. 3 babies. His wife. His mother standing guard like she has been here for months. He takes 1 step into the room. The nearest crib holds a child with a small fist raised against a white blanket, fingers spread open, completely unbothered by the magnitude of what they have just interrupted. He stares at that fist. He cannot look away from it. He didn't lose his family. He signed them away before they even existed. And the worst part, the part that will take him weeks to fully swallow, is that the document he put his name to was never supposed to be what it was. It was slipped into a stack of routine paperwork by someone who had been patient enough, and close enough, to know exactly when he wouldn't look. But that is not where this story starts. It starts 3 weeks earlier, in a conference room, with a man who was too busy building to notice what was being taken. The meeting was about numbers. It was always about numbers. Cairos sat at the head of his conference table in a fitted black suit, the room quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet when the person with the most power hasn't spoken yet. Older men. Men with more gray and more fear. All of them watching him. His neck tattoo, a black dragon, detailed enough to look alive, curved along his collar line, scales catching light when he shifted. He never addressed it. He never needed to. He was 30 years old. He ran things. He had been running things long enough that the running felt like standing still. The deportation file arrived during a recess. His assistant placed it beside his water glass with the efficiency of someone who understood that her boss's attention was a limited resource, and that immigration paperwork had no place competing for it. Cairos came back to the table, saw the file, and did not open it immediately. He finished the recess. He poured water. He looked out the window at a city that owed him nothing and gave him everything anyway. Virelle was already in the room when he returned. She was the kind of woman who understood how light worked. She had positioned herself near the window. Natural light. Her best angle. She wore her role as his corporate counsel the way she wore everything, precisely, with intention, leaving nothing to accident. "It's the quan matter," she said. "Calm. Practiced. Routine compliance. Your signature completes the company's disassociation from the case. The quan matter. Not Norelle. Not his wife. A matter. A case number with a name attached to it, dissolved into the language of procedure until the woman herself disappeared inside the paperwork. Cairos looked at the document for 4 seconds. He was tired. The morning had run long. 3 other signatures sat in the same stack. He picked up the pen. He signed it. On the other side of the city, Norelle was eating lunch. Sunlight on the kitchen counter. A small meal, a quiet hour. She felt nothing change. No signal. No cold moving through her the way people in stories describe it. Just the ordinary weight of an ordinary afternoon. Then the knock at the door. Then 2 officers. Then a phone call she was not allowed to finish. Then paperwork delivered in a language of bureaucracy so dense it required a translator just to understand what was being erased. She didn't fight. Not because she had no fight in her. She didn't fight because something was happening inside her body that she couldn't name yet, a nausea that arrived with the wrong timing, a heaviness that sat below her ribs instead of behind her eyes, a quietness in her own body that felt less like grief and more like something assembling itself in the dark. She didn't know what it was. Not yet. The holding facility smelled like recycled air and industrial cleaner, the kind of smell that makes a person feel like they have already been processed before anyone has said a word to them. Norelle sat in a plastic chair and catalogued her body the way her mother had taught her to handle uncertainty, methodically, without drama. Fatigue. Yes. But lower than it should be, deeper than stress explained. It lived in her bones instead of her temples. Nausea that arrived in waves, peaked at certain smells, and subsided without warning. She told herself it was the situation. The mind creates symptoms. Extreme pressure produces physical responses. She pressed both hands flat against her thighs and breathed slowly and waited for the nausea to confirm it was psychological. It confirmed nothing. The process moved around her with institutional efficiency. Forms. A hearing. A caseworker with kind eyes and a practiced voice who explained what would happen next the way someone explains a thing they have explained 400 times, clearly, and without expecting it to feel real to the person listening. Norelle answered every question correctly. She made no errors. She did not say her husband's name because the single phone call she was allowed told her that saying his name would complicate things. Complicate. As if things were simple. At night she lay on her back in the narrow dormitory and placed one hand flat on her stomach. She could not explain the gesture. Her hands did it before she gave them permission. The nausea peaked at dawn. Every morning. Precise, like something that had a schedule. She stopped going to the morning meal and asked for crackers instead. The woman in the bunk beside hers, a woman named Claudette, who had been inside 11 days and already knew every system in the building, pressed a small pack of ginger tablets into her hand without being asked. "Your body knows something," Claudette said. "Bodies always know first." Norelle thanked her and swallowed the tablet. She told herself it was stress. But the heaviness was not grief. The nausea was not anxiety. Her body was not reacting to what was being taken from her. It was responding to what was being built inside her, something cellular, something consequential, something entirely unconcerned with immigration law or deportation timelines or the document that bore her husband's signature. She didn't know. Cairos was in another meeting. He would attend 11 meetings that week. He would sign 4 more documents. He would not once say her name. The paperwork was completed on a Thursday. On Friday morning, the nausea hit with a precision so specific, so directional, that Norelle sat up in the dark at 3 in the morning and pressed her hand over her mouth and understood, with the sudden, total clarity of a thing that has been true for weeks finally refusing to be ignored, that she needed a test. Her body had known for days what her mind was only now catching up to. And in the space between that knowing and that catching up, the system had already decided what happened next. But someone else was also paying attention. Someone who had not yet said a word to Norelle, who did not yet know about the nausea or the crackers or the hand pressed flat on the stomach in the dark. Someone who had received 3 sentences of information, set them down on a kitchen table, and begun to understand that her son had signed something he did not read. Elson Kim received the information over morning tea that had already gone cold. 3 sentences. Deportation proceeding. Paperwork complete. Departure imminent. She set the paper down. She took her reading glasses off. She sat in her kitchen in the early morning stillness and thought about her son the way she had always thought about him, with clarity, and without the luxury of pretending she didn't see what she saw. She thought about the day he had brought Norelle into her home. The way he had placed his hand on the small of her back when they walked through the door. Small. Specific. Cairos did not touch people without intention. That gesture had told Elson something she filed away and never forgot. Something didn't line up. She reviewed the timeline. The document described as routine. The corporate counsel whose name was attached to the filing. Virelle. Elson had met Virelle twice. Both times she had smiled and said exactly the right things. Both times Elson had also noticed the way Virelle's eyes tracked Cairos across rooms, not with admiration, but with the patience of someone who had already decided something and was simply waiting for the right moment to collect it. Elson understood patience used as a weapon. She had seen it before. She had deployed it herself, in different rooms, for different reasons. She made one phone call. Quiet. Brief. 3 pieces of information. A date. No explanation given to the person on the other end, because none was required. She had known this person for 20 years and had never had to explain herself. The deportation was interrupted at the transport stage. Not with a dramatic courtroom intervention. Not with cameras or lawyers or raised voices. Quietly, a procedural irregularity surfaced in the documentation, a review period filed, a scheduled departure postponed pending assessment. Norelle was told, in the flat language of a system that does not apologize, that she could leave the facility while the review was processed. She walked out into daylight and stood on the pavement with nowhere to go. Their apartment was gone. Her name had been removed from the lease as part of the original paperwork. She had a phone with 11% battery and no plan. A black car was parked at the curb. Elson did not offer an explanation. She opened the door and said, "Get in. You need to eat something." Norelle got in. She had so many questions she couldn't decide which one to ask first. So she asked none of them. She just breathed. She watched the city move past the window and felt the nausea rise again and press against the back of her throat and held very still until it passed. She didn't know what Elson knew. She didn't know what had just been put in motion, or at what cost, or how long it would hold. She only knew that she was out of that building. And that the woman driving had made it happen. And that something inside her body was still keeping its own quiet count. The clinic was on a street where the buildings were old and the trees pushed through the pavement cracks, and nothing announced itself at high volume. Norelle sat in the examination room and counted the minutes. 11 of them. She had taken 3 pharmacy tests in Elson's guest bathroom, because 1 felt like accident, and 2 felt like coincidence, and 3 felt like the kind of answer that stops being a question. All 3 had said the same thing. She sat in the plastic chair under fluorescent light and waited for a doctor to say it in a language that would make it real. The doctor was a woman in her 50s with the calm of someone who has delivered every kind of news and understands that what people need most in those moments is time. She reviewed the results without rushing. She ordered an ultrasound without announcement. She set up the machine herself. The image appeared on the screen. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked at Norelle. "I need you to look at the screen with me," she said. Norelle looked. 3 separate shapes. 3 heartbeats, each one a small, steady flutter. 3 lives already decided, already running, already entirely unconcerned with the circumstances surrounding them. 3 children growing in the weeks before a document was signed that was supposed to erase their mother from the world their father controlled. The sound that came out of Norelle was not crying the way people expect crying to look. It was the sound of a woman processing too many things at once: the holding facility, the plastic chair, the phone call she hadn't been allowed to finish, the document she had never seen, the hand she had placed on her stomach in the dark without knowing why. It all arrived at the same time, and went through her like weather. She pressed both hands over her face. Her shoulders curved forward. She sat inside that sound for a long time. Elson was in the waiting room. When Norelle came out, eyes red, hands still not quite steady, Elson stood. She didn't reach for her. She didn't say anything immediate. She simply rose, and the act of standing said everything she was not going to put into words. I see you. I am not moving. They sat in the car for a long time without speaking. Does he know? Norelle said. No. Are you going to tell him? Elson looked through the windscreen at the street. An ordinary street. A man carrying groceries. 2 kids on bicycles. The world continuing at its usual pace, unbothered. Not yet, Elson said. Norelle turned to look at her. Why? Elson's expression didn't shift. But something moved behind her eyes, the kind of exhaustion that belongs to a person who has spent a long time standing between powerful people and the consequences of their own choices. Because right now, she said, the most dangerous thing for these children is being near their father before he understands what he did. Norelle heard that. Not as information someone was giving her. As a truth her body had already been holding. She didn't argue. She didn't ask what came next. What she didn't know yet, what neither of them said aloud, was that the woman who had built the paperwork, who had slipped it into the stack, who had stood by the window in the best light and called a wife a compliance matter, was still close. Still patient. Still watching the clock. And she did not yet know the review had been filed. What would you have done in Norelle's position? Stayed silent to protect the babies, or found a way to make Cairos face what he signed? Drop your answer in the comments. 5 months pass. Then 6. Then 7. Cairos keeps moving. That is what he does. That is the only language he has ever fully trusted. Forward motion, acquisition, construction. New properties. A partnership that took 14 months to build and 2 hours to close. He works past midnight on most nights. He eats at his desk. His phone is always lit. His calendar never has a blank hour in it. He is expanding something that already reaches further than most men will ever touch, and he does it with the focused, controlled energy of someone who has trained himself to believe that momentum is the same thing as meaning. He does not say Norelle's name. Not out loud. Not in meetings. Not when he passes the kitchen counter where she used to leave her tea mug slightly to the left of where it belonged. He has moved through the absence of her the way men like him move through most painful things, by filling the space around it so completely that the absence itself never gets enough room to breathe. Virelle is always close. She appears at the right moments, in the right rooms, at the right angle of day. She makes herself useful in ways that never announce themselves. She schedules things he forgets to schedule. She is present at dinners he does not remember agreeing to attend. She is patient in the way that only someone with a long-term plan can sustain. Patient the way a person is patient when they believe they have already won, and are simply waiting for the paperwork to catch up. She does not know about the black car. She does not know about the clinic on the quiet street, the 3 heartbeats on a screen, the woman who sat in the waiting room and stood without reaching. She does not know that Cairos Kim drove south that same afternoon and began converting the east wing of her house, systematically, without announcement, without asking anyone's permission, into a place where a woman carrying 3 lives could be safe. Norelle grows quieter as she grows larger. Not broken. Contained. She moves through Elson's house with the deliberate awareness of someone learning their own changed body the way a person learns a new road, carefully, attentively, with respect for the unfamiliar weight of it. Most days her curly hair is pulled back. She reads in the late morning. She eats with discipline. In the evenings she and Elson sit together and talk about things that are not Cairos, which room gets the best light in winter, what the babies might inherit from which side, what silence feels like when it is not frightened of itself. Elson asks very few questions. She makes decisions. A crib order placed with a craftsman she has used before. A specific warmth of lighting for the nursery. 3 of everything, 3 blankets, 3 sets of clothing sorted by size, 3 white mobiles that catch the air from the window and turn slowly. She arranges the cribs in a triangle. She steps back, looks at the room, and adjusts nothing. It is already right. She does not call her son. 3 cities over, Cairos signs another document. He looks at it for the standard amount of time, not long enough, never long enough, and passes it to the next stack. His building continues. His empire adds another floor. He is not a man without a family. He is a man who never once stopped long enough to look for one. And in a room filling slowly with the smell of cedar wood and clean linen and 3 lives pressing steadily toward the world, Norelle places her hand on her side and feels the movement beneath it. She doesn't reach for her phone. She doesn't pull up his number and sit with her thumb above the call button the way she might have done months ago. She just holds still. She breathes. She waits for what she already knows is coming. What she doesn't know, what she has no way of knowing from inside Elson's quiet house, is that on the other side of the city, something has shifted. Virelle has started asking questions. Not loud ones. Not the kind that get reported back. The quiet kind. The kind a careful person asks when they have noticed an absence they cannot account for, when a review period has run longer than it should, when a name that was supposed to disappear keeps appearing in peripheral paperwork. She is starting to look. And she is very good at finding things. It begins at 4:17 in the morning. Norelle is at 33 weeks when her body makes the decision for her. She comes down the stairs holding the wall, breathing through something that started low and moved through her entire frame like a current, and finds Elson already standing in the hallway, already dressed, car keys in hand, one lamp on, coat over her arm. As if some part of her had been sleeping in a state of readiness for weeks, one ear always turned toward the east wing, waiting for this exact sound. Either of them says anything. Elson drives at 4 a.m. the way she does everything, controlled, purposeful, fast enough to matter, steady enough to not make the fear worse. One hand at the top of the wheel. The other resting near Norelle's on the center console. Not touching. Close enough to reach. The city outside is empty and blue dark and completely indifferent to what is happening inside the car. Norelle watches it go past and thinks, briefly, of calling him. The thought arrives. She looks at it. She lets it pass. The birth takes 4 hours. It is nothing like the version people describe when they are trying to make it sound meaningful in retrospect. It is physical and consuming and relentless in a way that strips a person down to their most basic function. 3 times. The same demand, 3 times over, each one arriving before she has fully recovered from the last. The first baby is a boy. The second is a girl. The third is a boy. Each one placed on her chest for a moment that does something to time, compresses it, clears it, makes the 4 hours before it recede into something survivable. Each one warm. Each one an undeniable fact. Each one someone who did not exist this morning and now does, completely, in a way that cannot be argued with. Elson stands at the foot of the bed through all of it. She does not cry. Her expression holds something older than happiness, the expression of a woman watching something survive that should never have been put in danger in the first place. She watches all 4 of them. She does not look away once. A nurse writes down 3 weights, 3 names left blank 3 times, in the careful handwriting of someone recording something that will be permanent. The room is quiet afterward in the specific way rooms go quiet when the emergency is over and the ordinary is still too new to fill the space. Norelle holds the last baby, the smallest boy, and looks at his face and feels everything arrive at once: the holding facility, the plastic chair, the phone call she could not finish, the ginger tablets pressed into her hand without explanation, the black car, the guest room, the 3 cribs in a triangle, the 7 months of a life lived inside a silence no one asked her to carry. 3 lives. 3 lives that were 72 hours from not existing, from a deportation flight that would have taken their mother to a country where she knew no one who could help, where there was no Elson with a black car and no questions and a craftsman-built nursery already waiting. Cairos does not know any of this. He is in his building. He slept through 4:17 a.m. the way he sleeps through everything that is not directly in front of him. His phone shows no missed calls, because no one called him. His calendar shows Tuesday as a full day. He will be in 3 meetings by 10 in the morning. He is going to find out. Not today. Not because anyone is going to call him today. But because Virelle has been asking questions, and one of those questions landed in the wrong place, and the wrong place led her to a piece of information, a hospital record, a county review filing, a name that should have been gone, that is going to make everything that was done very quietly become very loud, very fast. She knows Norelle is still in the country. She just doesn't know the rest yet. He came for his mother. That is the plain, ordinary fact at the center of it. Cairos drove himself to Elson's house because she had not returned 3 of his calls in 6 days. 6 days of silence from a woman who answered within 4 hours regardless of time zone or circumstances. He noticed it the way he noticed most deviations from expected pattern, quietly, without reaction, filing it away until it required attention. He did not call ahead when he drove over. He told himself it was because he wanted to check on her. What it actually was, if he had been honest with himself, which he was not yet, was that some part of him had registered a frequency he couldn't name, a pull toward this particular house on this particular morning, and he had followed it without examination. The front door was open. He raised his hand to knock anyway. Habit. The crying reached him before his knuckles touched wood. 3 voices. Simultaneous. Distinct. Not the sound of a single upset child but 3 separate announcements, each one its own note, and his body understood something before his mind caught up, some animal recognition that bypassed language entirely. He pushed the door open with the flat of his palm and stood in the hallway and looked into a room that rearranged everything he thought he knew about the last 7 months. The nursery. The light. The 3 cribs. And Norelle in the nursing chair between 2 of them, looking at him the way a woman looks at a man she has already made her decision about, steady, unhurried, giving away nothing. She did not startle. She did not reach for him. She sat with her hands in her lap and waited, with the patience of someone who has had 7 months to prepare for this exact moment, and has decided that the preparation is all she owes him. His mother stood just behind her. "Close the door," Elson said. He closed it. He crossed to the nearest crib. The baby inside was awake, eyes open, unfocused, a small fist loosening slowly against the white blanket, completely unbothered. Cairos gripped the railing. He could not speak for a long time. When he finally did, the sentence came out without its noun, because the noun was too large for the moment. "How long?" 7 months, his mother said. "Before you thought to ask?" Something moved across his face, not one thing but several, arriving in the wrong order, layered in a way that made him look, briefly, like a man who has discovered that the map he has been using does not match the territory. Shock. And underneath it, something more specific than guilt, the particular weight of a person who allowed something to happen not through cruelty but through the precise combination of trust misplaced, attention withheld, and a pen moved too fast across a page. He stood there. The baby in the crib made a sound. Small. Certain. Entirely unconcerned with the weight of what was happening 3 feet above its head. He had built a life at speed. He had treated urgency as intelligence and brevity as efficiency, and in doing so he had handed a careful, patient person exactly the opening she needed. He had signed a document in 4 seconds. It had cost his wife a holding facility, a plastic chair, 7 months inside someone else's house, and a birth he did not witness. He didn't say any of that yet. He just stood at the rail and looked at the child. And Norelle, from the nursing chair, watched his face do the things she had spent months imagining, not with satisfaction, and not with mercy. With the clear, level attention of a woman who is deciding, in real time, what comes next. She had not yet made up her mind. That was the part he did not know. She had prepared for his arrival. She had not prepared an answer. He asked for 5 minutes alone with his mother. Norelle gathered two of the babies without being asked and moved to the far room with the quiet efficiency of a woman who has stopped performing ease and simply acts. He watched her go. He did not call after her. He sat down in the chair she had just left, the nursing chair still warm, and pressed both hands flat on his knees and looked at his mother. "Start from the beginning," he said. She did not move from where she stood. "You start," she said. "Tell me exactly what you signed." The silence between them had shape. He looked at his hands, then at her, then at the three cribs. Then back at his hands. "Virelle said it was routine? A compliance matter. Disassociation from a case. What did the document actually say?" He didn't answer right away. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because arriving at the full extent of what he had not read, in this room, in front of his mother, with three of his children within earshot, required him to dismantle something about himself he had been carefully maintaining. He had been a man who trusted his systems. His systems had been built by people he had chosen. He had not considered what happened when one of those people made a choice he wasn't informed about. "You didn't read it," his mother said. Flat. Certain. "I trusted. You trusted a woman who needed your wife out of the way." Elson's voice did not rise. It never did. "And your wife sat in a government facility and held her stomach in the dark and didn't call you, because the one person she might have called had just signed her out of her own life." He left an hour later. He made 3 calls from the car before he reached the end of the block. He pulled files. He sat at his desk until 2 in the morning doing what he should have done before he ever picked up that pen, reading. Every line. Every clause. Every reference document attached. The document was not a compliance matter. It had been assembled over weeks by someone who understood corporate immigration architecture well enough to bury a directive inside language that looked like a dozen forms he had legitimately signed before. The effect was the deportation of his wife. The signature authorizing it was his. The intent behind it was not. Virelle was not in the office the next morning. She was not there the day after. He did not move against her through any channel that would create noise. He was not a man who confused spectacle with resolution. What he did instead was quiet, thorough, and final in the way that only a man with patience and resources can make something final. He documented everything. He filed through channels that did not require his name on the front page. He ensured that every door she had used was closed, that every record she had touched was examined, that the review of Norelle's case was not just reopened but handed to people who understood that it should never have existed. He did not expect to be thanked for it. He understood, with the specific humility of a man who has been forced to see himself clearly, that correcting what he broke was not a gesture. It was a floor. The lowest possible thing he could do. It was not repair. It was not the same as the 7 months. It was not equivalent to the plastic chair or the facility smell or the 3 births he did not witness or the hand pressed flat on a stomach in the dark while he slept 3 cities away. He knew that. But knowing a thing and knowing what to do with it were 2 different kinds of knowledge. And standing in his office at 2 in the morning, files spread across every surface, the city quiet outside his window, Cairos Kim understood for the first time that the empire he had been building was not the largest thing in his life. It was just the thing he had been paying attention to. He comes every Tuesday and Thursday. Always the same time. Always the same quiet, not the quiet of a man uncertain of his welcome, but the quiet of a man who has stopped assuming that showing up is enough and started learning that presence is a practice, not a declaration. The babies are 4 months old now. They have become themselves. The second boy hates the sound of the electric kettle, registers it from 3 rooms away, and announces his objection immediately. The girl tracks every light source in the room with the focused attention of someone taking notes. The first boy has worked out that a particular sound produces a particular result, and uses it with the calm confidence of someone who discovered leverage early. Cairos learns all of this the way he learns everything he has decided actually matters, by sitting still, by watching, by not filling every silence with the sound of himself. Norelle is there on Tuesdays. Not Thursdays. Thursdays are Elson's hours with the children, and that boundary has never been spoken aloud and has never been crossed by either of them. On Tuesdays, Norelle moves through the shared space with a distance that is not cold but is not yet warm, the careful, measured distance of a woman who is not punishing him and is not forgiving him and is simply taking the time that the situation actually requires, rather than the time he wishes it required. She answers questions about the children. She gives him information. She corrects him when he holds the smallest boy wrong. She does not pretend the distance isn't there. She does not perform comfort she doesn't have. He does not push. This is the first sign, in a long time, that he is capable of learning something that costs him. He had operated his whole life on the assumption that speed was a form of intelligence. That signing fast meant he trusted the right people. That looking away from the details was a delegation of trust rather than a failure of attention. That a man who builds something large enough is exempt from the consequences of what he did not read. He had been wrong. Trust does not return the way a business recovers. It does not respond to resources or strategy, or a well-timed gesture. It returns the way winter light returns, by degrees so small you cannot track them on any single day, only by stepping back and comparing where you are now to where you were 3 months ago. On a Tuesday in the 6th week, the first boy is lying on a blanket on the floor when Cairos lowers himself down beside him. He puts one finger near the small open hand. The baby grabs it. The grip is complete. Absolute. The certainty in it is unreasonable for something that has existed for 4 months. Cairos looks down at 4 fingers closed around one of his and sits with that for a long time. Norelle is across the room. She does not say anything. She does not look away. That is the whole of it. Not forgiveness. Not a reset. Not a gesture that erases 7 months of a woman managing the consequences of a 4-second decision made by a man who trusted the wrong person and did not read the page. What it is, instead, is a beginning, the kind that does not announce itself, the kind that does not come with a sound, the kind that only becomes visible later when someone looks back and tries to find the exact moment things started to shift. He had walked into rooms his whole life as the person who decided what happened next. He had learned in this house, in this room, with these 4 people, that some things do not get decided. They get earned. They get carried. They get shown up for, Tuesday after Tuesday, in the same quiet, without the expectation of a reward at the end. He had built towers. He had signed documents that moved money across cities. He had sat at the head of tables where men twice his age waited for him to speak before they breathed. None of it had required what this required. Some people do not lose what they love because it is taken. They lose it because they moved too fast to see it was there. Cairos Kim had done exactly that, and the woman across the room, who had carried 3 lives through a system designed to erase her, who had sat in a plastic chair and pressed her hand to her stomach and kept going, who had never once asked to be rescued because she had learned not to wait for it, that woman was still in the room. That was not a small thing. That was everything. And if he spent the rest of his life learning to be worthy of it, Tuesday by Tuesday, one small grip at a time, it would still not be enough. But it would be a start. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, drop a comment below and tell us what part hit you the hardest. Was it the document signed in 4 seconds? Was it Norelle in that plastic chair, hand on her stomach, alone? Was it Elson already dressed at 4 in the morning with the keys in her hand? Your thoughts matter here, and they inspire others who read them. If you are new to this channel, subscribe right now and turn on your notifications. See you on the next one.